Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Undergraduate webinar series, an interactive online platform connecting high school students to the Ashoka community. Thank you for joining us today for this webinar on undergraduate admissions, process, and application form. I'm Pani Shergill. I'm the Deputy Director with the Outreach team. Joining me today is Marcia Prince, Director, Office of Admissions, Ashoka University, and together we will be addressing some of your queries on the Ashoka undergraduate admissions process. Before we begin, I would request our audience to kindly type any questions they might have in the Q&A box provided on your Zoom screen, and we will address them towards the end of the session. So without further ado, let's get started. Over to you, Marcia.
Thank you, Parneet, and good evening, everybody. Allow me to share my screen for just a moment. Okay. So before we get started and I launch right into the admissions process and the application form for this year, I wanted to say that oftentimes people ask us why our admissions process is set up the way it is. So I just want to maybe take a minute or so to address that. The reason we do our admissions process the way we do it, and you will hear this term over and over again, we use the word holistic, right? So holistic admissions process is what Ashoka University is probably largely known for. Ties in directly with what we expect students to expect and students to experience during their academic journey at Ashoka. So the liberal education, pedagogy, and methodology of the academic curriculum that Ashoka upholds ensures that students really get a very holistic sort of education where they explore a variety of disciplines. So you will hear words such as multidisciplinary or interdisciplinary, where you understand that you cannot study any subject or any discipline alone. Nothing can be completely understood on its own. And hence, you get a very holistic sort of education. So what we have done is we have taken what happens at university and imbibe that into the admissions process. So we are looking for students who will succeed at Ashoka, right? And so our process is designed around the education that Ashoka offers. So a holistic admissions process ensures that we get to know you and understand you and all our applicants in a very thorough and detailed manner within your unique context, within where you come from, what your interests are, what you want to pursue, what you see yourself doing in the future. And then we evaluate through our process to see if you would do well at Ashoka, if you would succeed at Ashoka, and if Ashoka would be suitable for you as a student for your undergraduate program. So having said that, let me quickly go into the process for this year, as well as the application form. Sorry. So the admissions process for this year has very similar to last year. We've not made too many changes in case some of you are aware. We have 3 stages. So stage 1 is the application form itself, and it includes the assessment round as well. So if you have started an application form, you'll realize that it is detailed. It has a few sections in it that need to be addressed. You need to spend a little bit of time on it. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to also run through the application form with you, the various sections of it. So, and we will take some questions at the end. So if you have any questions, please post them, and then Praneeth and I will address them. So the application form, you will notice, has sections about personal details, academic scores, personal essays, a letter of recommendation, non-academic engagement, and then some survey and support sections. Once you submit an application form, within the same stage, you write your mandatory assessments. So the assessments have 2 parts, and I'll talk more about it as I go along. The Ashoka aptitude assessment and the on-the-spot essay. Once you have written your assessments, the Office of Admissions reads every application form and then evaluates it in light of the assessments and all the other parameters on the application form. And the admissions committee then shortlists a certain number of applicants for the interview. So if you are shortlisted for the interview round, then you get to meet with the panel. It's a mandatory part of the process. Interviewers will interact with shortlisted candidates, get to know them. There's an evaluation process, post which it's stage 3, where you are given your decision. So if you have been interviewed, you get a confirmed, you can get a confirmed offer of admission, you can get a conditional offer, you can be waitlisted. Maybe your decision will be deferred. Maybe we need something more from you. Usually it is the class 12 score, or maybe that would be the end of your admissions process and you may get a denial of admission. Once you get a decision from Ashoka, which is a confirmed or a firm offer, then the admissions committee, once it's declared it, you get to apply for financial aid if you wish. A form will be opened, and then you will be evaluated based on the documents you provide, and then depending on that, you will get your financial aid status declared to you. Okay, so we have 1 admission cycle and 4 rounds. So this process, which I have just explained, happens 4 times within the same year. And so I will show you the calendar of what it looks like. You may have seen it on the website. But to summarize, the admissions process is holistic. So the various steps of it allow us to evaluate you in a holistic manner based on your academics and your non-academic engagement. But our financial aid is need-based, and it's only open, the process is only open for those who have been made an offer of admission. So moving on. Yeah. So if you can see this is what the calendar looks like for the year. And I've highlighted the round 1 dates that are coming up. So the submission deadline for round 1. So our applications open on October 4th. Submission deadline for round 1 is 10th November. Once you submit your application form, the mandatory assessments are on 21st November, which is a Sunday. And I will tell you more about the assessments, but basically it's 2 hours and our assessments will open at 9:30 in the morning till 4:30. You can take it at any point during that day. It will take you approximately 2 hours. And then if you get shortlisted and you get interviewed post that, you will get a final decision by 14th January, which is much before, the year sort of gets into motion. You prepare for your other exams and carry on. So you could know your decision to Ashoka University as early as mid-January. So having said this, let me get into some few general guidelines as you start this process of applying. So these are some things for you to remember. And then I will get into the application form. But our request is that as you register and as you start your application form, that you only use a personal email ID. So please don't use a school or an official or an institutional or a parent or guardian's office email ID, something that can expire. We want something that you can have for the course of your 3 to 4 years of university or undergraduate life. So please use a personal email ID like a Gmail or a Yahoo or something that's that's not going to be deactivated anytime over the next few years. Submit only 1 application form within 1 admission cycle. So if you submit 2 or more application forms in 1 year within 1 admission cycle, your application will be annulled and not be considered. If applications are plagiarized or essays or content on your application form is copy-pasted, then your candidature will become not eligible. So we recommend that you fill your application form by yourself. Give yourself enough time. Our application form would require 2 to 3 weeks. If you're more diligent, maybe you can fill it in a week. But take some time, read through it carefully, read through it properly, and give yourself time to fill your application form. On the website, you'll see that there is a section on what is not eligible and a section on incomplete application criteria. I request that you go through that. If you're not eligible, then you will not be considered as part of the shortlist for the interviews. If your application is incomplete and there's something that we need more from you, then we will reach out to you. So, of course, fill all your details correctly, attach valid attachments where needed, don't provide incorrect information or be casual in presenting your content. This is an official document that you're submitting to a university. So be thoughtful, be careful. There are a lot of help boxes on the application form. So you can look at them closely, you can consider them. If you need any help and support, most of it is there. A lot of it is on the website. If you still need more help, of course, our teams are available for you to reach out. And so I'll share our contact details with you later. But before you get to the point of submitting, we would recommend that would be a good time for you to talk to someone that you trust, someone who can review and check your application form, and then you can submit it. Once you've done that, you take the mandatory Ashoka assessments in the round in which you submit your application form so that your application form can be evaluated, and then you can move on to the next stage, whatever that might be. So let me show you what are the components that are there in the application form. So in the application form, and I'll talk about each one of them a little bit in detail, but just to summarize here, there are personal and family details where we ask for some ID proof, details about your family, the aim of it. I'll talk about it some more, but there are things that we want to know about you. And so it will all be covered in the personal and family details. There's an entire academic section where we ask for scores from class 11 onwards, so class 10 onwards, so class 10, 11, and 12. If you have final scores of class 12, say you gave your exam last year or the year before, you can submit it. If not, then we take predicted scores from yourself and also from your school, if that option is there. If you have taken a standardized test, for example, if you've taken the SAT or the ACT, then you can submit those as well. They're not mandatory. They're only if you've taken them already. Then there's a non-academic engagement. So we have a space for you to fill up to 5, but where we've made 3 mandatory non-academic activities and engagements where we would like you to fill those. There's also an additional question on books that you may have read. So I'm going to talk about each of these sections a little bit more, so bear with me as I sort of run through this. There is a section on personal essays, which is an important part, which I will again talk about and read the prompts out to you. There are 3 essays, all have a different and unique sort of focus. So we're expecting you to, address the prompt carefully. And of course, there's a word limit, which is also different. And then we expect you to fill in submit your essays within that word limit. Letter of recommendation, very important. And if you can submit it, it would be very helpful. We've put some things together as to what we would like to hear from your recommender, but it's not mandatory because we know that there may be some of you who may not have access to somebody to write a letter of recommendation, and that's okay. But if you are able to, then we would request you to submit a letter of recommendation. And then towards the end, there's sections on a survey, course preference, and support, where we ask you a few questions about yourself, about majors that you may want to pursue at Ashoka, which are not binding, but you may want to start exploring them, and then you are free to change your mind. And then of course there's a section on support where we want to understand if there's any way that we can support you. So through the form, there are certain parts of the form that will require you to submit attachments. And so where there are mandatory attachments, you would have to supply those. Where there are mandatory contents required from you, you would have to fill something in. You may not be able to submit your application form. You will not be able to submit your application form if the mandatory sections are not filled. Having said that, what we would like is that you fill the mandatory sections for sure, but you also fill the non-mandatory sections. So fill whatever is relevant, because the more details you give us, the more helpful it is for us to evaluate your application form, considering that we read every application form thoroughly and we evaluate. Okay, so moving forward, I want to talk on this slide a little bit about the personal and family information and then the academic scores. So the personal and family information really gives us insights into the life, background, context of the applicant for it to be evaluated completely. So there would be like small sections asking, what does your parent guardian do? Or, how many siblings do you have? It kind of gives us an understanding of who you are and what the circumstances are in your background as we evaluate the application form. So the aim is to get to know you as much as we can, even though we may or may not meet all of you, but to be able to understand you. And the application form really is the window, the first window, and maybe for some people, the only window, which allows us to have a peek into you and your life, right? So fill both mandatory and non-mandatory sections, be as thorough and detailed as possible. We require you to submit some official identity proof and also photographs, like an official photograph, a passport photograph. Please don't submit a group photograph or, a photograph of an activity that you're doing. We need to see your face. We would like to see clearly what you look like. And there are other smaller things that you will notice as you look into this section. But the larger point behind it is give us as much information so that we can get to know you. So moving on very quickly to the academic scores. The academic scores allow us to evaluate the rigor and consistency of the applicant, right? We want to know, how have you been engaging with your academics? How rigorously have you been engaging? How consistent have you been? So we ask for scores from class 10 onward. So 10th, 11th, 12th. We understand that some of you, due to the pandemic, may not have had the opportunity, or maybe the school did not conduct class 11 exams. So we have put a little note there for you saying what you can do. Whatever the school has given to you as your class 11 scores, please upload that. If there's a document from the school, that's helpful. If there's nothing, we would request you to get a letter from your school with your scores, whatever you can get to substantiate the scores that you put. But please be careful that you put whatever is on your class 10, 11, and 10 and 11 scores, and 12th if you have your final scores already. What's on your diploma or your certificate or your mark sheet? Please ensure that you put the correct scores. In the absence of final class 12 scores, which should probably be many of you, we request and require candidates to submit self-predicted scores. So self-predicted scores are not random scores. We are hoping that they are scores that you believe you will get at the end of the year. We also understand that certain boards like CBSE, ISC have split the board exams into two. So maybe I'll say it here, and if there's a question later, we'll answer it again, that we would like to look at what you would get in your overall year. So if it's 50% of the syllabus is covered in your first board exam and 50% in the next board exam, what we want to know is, what do you think you will get in 100% of your course syllabus at the end of the year? So that would be your predicted scores. If it's on 100, it would be on 100. Okay. Many schools have school counselors and or a point of contact in the school who would submit a school predicted grade or a mark sheet for the student. So we accept that as well. However, the self-predicted scores are mandatory, so please don't write any there. Fill it from your side, and we will also accept what comes from the school. There's a link that goes to your school. You need to fill in the details. It goes to them. They submit it. If it comes on time through the link, it becomes a part of your application, and then we will evaluate it. We will not accept anything by email because we're not able to track that. And so there are deadlines that are given. I think it's 7 days after the submission deadline. Till then, they can submit the school predicted scores. All this information I'm saying will also be on the form. So, and to the counselor of your school, and so they will get to know that. Fill in the names and subjects and the scores correctly. Also moving on, in case, like I said, you've taken an SAT or an ACT, please fill in the scores, but they're not mandatory. So if you don't have SAT, ACT scores, you will not be penalized for that, or it won't work against you. But if you have them and they're good and you want to submit them, please submit them with the required attachments that are mentioned on the application form. If you're a gap year student, please don't hesitate to apply. A lot of times people ask us saying that, I took a year off and I did some other things. Will it work against me? No, it won't work against you. It will be a great addition to your application form if you can articulate that well. There's a section for that. Or maybe you have tried to explore something new, or you have tried maybe another university and then taken a break and done something else. Whatever it might be, there is a space for that for you to fill in the details. So please don't hold yourself back. Add as much as information as you can. Okay, moving on. This section is a very important section for us because what we want to know in the non-academic activities and engagement section is that for us, it reveals how applicants use their time, their resources, and their energy outside the classroom, right? Outside your school academics or your homework or your exams, outside what is specifically required of you. How are you pursuing your interests or passions or learning new things, whatever it might be, outside and in a consistent manner? So that's what we want to know, because I believe that if we can know what a person does in their free time and outside, what are actually required, it tells a lot about the person, right? It tells us what really matters to you. And so what we have done is we have given you the option to fill in 5 of those, but 3 we've made mandatory because we really want you to put something in there that you actually do. It doesn't have to be something that you think is, something extraordinary. It can be something simple, but it's going to be unique to you because that's what you value and that's how you spend your time, right? So we want you to prioritize what you want to put out there. So 3 engagements mandatory, 2 are optional, but you can use up to 5. You can include personal interests. Maybe you like to bake, or maybe you like to read, or maybe you're somebody who likes to cycle. Like, it could be any of these very personal things that you do on your own, or it could be leadership positions or activities that you are part of in competitive levels, maybe sports or dance or drama or their hobbies, or, some very interesting internships that you've done, which has really taught you a lot, something that you have really enjoyed, maybe online courses. I mean, whatever it is that you have participated in, right? And a community service. So, I mean, over the last year and a half, because of the pandemic, we understand that students have not had the opportunity to go out and do things. Don't let that stop you. We understand that. So we're not going to hold that against you, right? Obviously, you couldn't go out there and play football or participate in a national level or state level event, right? That's okay. Put what really matters to you, how you spent your time, what did you enjoy doing? It could even be something as, engaging as caring for someone at home during the pandemic, right? So please be honest about it and put that, and we will consider it in activities where there have been certificates, right? Where there's certificates for participation or positions or awards or examinations, something where evaluations have happened. Please provide certificates and collateral if they're available. And within your school, if you've participated in inter-school on behalf of your school or above levels, or you've been, a captain or led a team or the student council, been part of that, or whatever position you may have had, we would appreciate some certificates and collateral, even if it's a letter from the school or, some photographs. So please feel free to attach what you have. The aim of it is that whatever you put down, that you substantiate that as much as possible. We understand that some things cannot be substantiated, right? But maybe they can be. Maybe you just love baking and you've taken a lot of photographs of things you've baked, and maybe you have an Instagram page on baking. Why don't you put that for us to look at as well, so that we can see what you have done? And that would also substantiate your interest in baking. So that's one example. There are, a million examples that can be given around this. Okay, so moving on very quickly, pick the highest level of engagement. in a particular activity, if you are picking that activity, and then provide certificates for it, right? Again, please don't attach your resume or don't attach 20 or 30 certificates and expect us to sort of prioritize. We want you to prioritize. We want you to tell us what's important to you. What have you been doing? What do you love? What are you passionate about? Okay, there is a non-mandatory section on reading. What we want to know in that is what text-based content do you enjoy, right? What do you explore? It can be across genres. It can be a certain kind of genre, but we just want to know what sort of reading you do. So there's the space for you to fill up to 5. So 5 favorite books and then authors. So you can preferably things that you have engaged with in the last 2 to 3 years, right? So that we know what you are exploring now outside your school textbooks, okay? So this is outside your school textbooks. Please keep that in mind as you fill the section. Okay. I suppose this is one that most people have a little bit of apprehension about. It's a personal application essays. But if you understand why we ask you to write these, maybe it'll be a little bit easier. For us, because these are places where you can actually write, where you have the liberty and the freedom to engage and tell us things that may not have a space for you to share in the rest of the form, right? So our aim with the personal essay section is we want to know and understand how you as an applicant, as a student, as a child, as whoever you may be, a friend, a sibling in your world, right? How do you observe? How do you perceive things around you? How do you think? How do you engage with those things that you perceive, right? So you obviously have to think about some things. We want to know how you think. We want to know how you engage with the things around you, but also with yourself. And, some of these things change. We discover more and more of ourselves as we go along. But at this stage, we are interested in knowing how you think and how you engage with yourself and with the world around you. And so the prompts that we have come up with are based around this. We think that these prompts or these essays will help us maybe get some sort of a view into these things that we are asking of you. So make sure that you read every prompt very carefully, you understand it, and then you address the prompt, right? And make sure that your responses reflect that you have actually engaged with the prompt and that you have written it as honestly as possible. And so we would request that you write the first draft yourself. Don't copy paste, don't pay someone else to write your essays, don't have a sibling write your essay, or a parent, or, someone you think would be better at writing essays. That's not what we want. What we want is your idea, your thoughts, who you are. Even if you think, I don't really know how to write essays, I'm not very good at it, let the first draft be yours. Maybe let the second and third drafts also be yours, right? Eventually, when you're about to submit, you can have somebody look at it, like you have someone look at the application form, someone you trust, you have them look at your essays, have them give you feedback, and then you can tweak it. But let the narrative, let the story, let the ideas be yours. So the first essay, very quickly, is about an idea, concept, or theory that you find interesting and why, right? In what ways have you examined that topic or engaged with it? So we want to know, what is it that interests you? What have you done then to examine that particular topic? How have you done your research? Or what have you read about it? Or what have you watched around it? What discussions have you had? And what sort of an understanding have you arrived at? So this is what we want to know. This topic is a little bit focusing on, for us to know on how you think. So that's this topic. This topic is could be academic, could be a little more intellectual. It's for us to know what's going on in your head. How are you navigating ideas, concepts, things that you observe around you? And how are you doing your research around that? The second one is very personal. And this is probably the only space in the application form where you can really share a very personal experience, right? Something that's a part of you or something you have experienced or faced or observed. It could be anything, but something that has really significantly shaped you and your perspective on life. So, of course, provide relevant details to help us understand you. But this is a place where you can feel free to really talk about yourself and about your own personal sort of experience. The third one is something that we felt in today's day and age where language and communication is such a big thing in the world, right? Whether it's online, whether it's even as interactions in person have become a lot lesser this year, but language really influences our understanding of the world, right? So what we want you to do is pick a word, a favorite word of yours, any language, explain it to us, and tell us why this word is special to you, and possibly how it has sort of impacted you. Impacted maybe something that you understand differently now, or impacted a way, something or a way in which you feel differently now. Anything, it could be anything, or it has impacted you to do something, right? It could be any of those things or more, but just a favorite word. So yeah, so these are the 3 essay prompts, and please keep within the stated word limits. We think these will be interesting for you to start work on your drafts, and we are looking forward to really reading all your essays. So keep us in mind as well as you write, because hopefully these will be an excellent way for us to really get to know you further. Okay. Moving on, a little bit more about you. So the letter of recommendation, as I mentioned earlier, from a person who knows the applicant well, in an academic or professional capacity, right? This would give us a glimpse or an insight into the applicant's life from somebody who knows you for a much longer period than we do, right? They can tell us about maybe your academic interests, about special characteristics about you, strengths or weaknesses, or things they think that you are extremely good at and that you can excel at, or skills that you have. Maybe something about your character, or maybe an insight into you as a person. Anything that they can tell us that would add value to your application form. So it's not a mandatory requirement, but it's highly recommended, as I mentioned, but written by somebody or someone who's either a teacher, tutor, mentor, counselor, supervisor, with whom you have closely interacted, right? So I want to say this here, it doesn't matter, the hierarchy of who writes it doesn't matter. I know often people have asked us, would there be more value in my letter of recommendation if it's written by a teacher or by the principal of the school, right? What we want to tell you is we want a letter of recommendation by someone who knows you well, who is associated with you well. But please don't get a letter of recommendation from a family member or a friend or a relative. So this is not a personal letter of recommendation. This is a letter of recommendation by somebody who knows you in an academic or a professional capacity. So keep that in mind as you decide who you want the letter of recommendation from. Talk to them, tell them the process, make sure they agree that they will submit it, on the link within the deadline. Again, I think it is 7 days post-submission deadline they have, so they can write it, submit it on the link, and then it will become a part of your application form, and then we will use that. And I must tell you that this is a really excellent tool for us. When recommenders write letters of recommendation, keeping in mind the applicant, right, where it's not just a standard copy-paste, it really adds value to your application. So who you ask and ensuring that they do it, following up with them, will be very helpful for you as an applicant. So after that, we have a survey section and course preference. A few questions, quick questions about how you got to know Ashoka, whether you've been associated with Ashoka in the past, maybe whether you attended the YSP, which year, things like that. Also, what preferred majors would you see yourself maybe pursuing at Ashoka? Again, only indicative in nature. They're not, we're not going to hold you to them, right? So you can put up to 3. So you have to pick 3. So you can diversify. Maybe they are not subjects maybe they're not courses that you have studied before. And that's okay. If that's something that you really want to explore, you can put them, knowing that you will only declare your major at Ashoka if you get enrolled as a student by the end of the 3rd semester. Please also note that whatever you put on the application form will later reflect also if you get shortlisted for the interview in conversations within the interview, right? So think about things that you put about, because in the interview, if you do get shortlisted, each of these sections are oftentimes covered in the conversation. So keep that in mind. The last section really, before you submit the application form, is a very important section for us. Ashoka really believes and very actively seeks to support applicants during the admissions process, first to begin with, and if applicants enroll as students at Ashoka, then through various offices and centers. And in the application form, you'll find an attachment which has a link to different centers and offices that are there, that are established at Ashoka to support you. So you can go through those. So we do ask you, if you need English language assistance, or if there is a disability, visual, hearing, locomotor, speech, language, or a cognitive or learning disability that you have, and or a physical health issue or mental health issue, or anything that may be not mentioned on this list, but you want, you can mention, which you believe in the past has affected your academic life, your student life in one way or the other, right? And where you think that, I may need some special attention in the admissions process, or I may need some special attention if I get enrolled as a student. In some spaces, they do ask for an attachment as well. So if that is there, whatever you have, but please don't hesitate to fill this section, because this is our way of hoping that we can support you to the best of our ability from when you apply to hopefully when you get on campus as a student, right? So we've also included a question saying that the following accommodations are available. So if you check any of these where you say you want compensatory time, then we will, for during the assessments or you need English language support, you need extra time for that, we will find a way, or you need a scribe to write for you because of certain, impairments or disabilities, then we will help arrange for that from the time of admissions, right? And maybe there's something that's not mentioned here in the list, but please, you can check other and write. Please note that use this judiciously, obviously, but if you need support, please don't hesitate to fill this section. This is very, very important. And this will be our way to support you. If you need more, if you have more questions about this, you can write to us and we'd be happy to respond to them. Once this is done and you submit your application form, the mandatory assessment happens. So very quickly, just keeping an eye on the clock, very quickly, there's the Ashoka aptitude assessment. It's 40 questions, 90 minutes. It's developed for us by Cambridge. It's based on their thinking skills assessment. So this is what we have been using. It's every round has one assessment date. The assessments are different for each round. And it evaluates your thinking skills, problem solving skills, critical thinking skills, whether and numerical spatial reasoning. So it's not something that you need to prepare much for, okay? So this is 90 minutes. If you do get compensatory time, then that would be an extra 30 minutes for those who the admissions committee approves compensatory time because of your particular concern. The next part of it is, so there are two parts in the mandatory assessments. You have to do both are mandatory. The on-the-spot essay, you get 2 prompts, you choose from one. 30 minutes, no word limit, you can write as much. Again, the prompt that you pick evaluates your engagement with the prompt, whether you can think critically, your clarity of thought, creativity if needed, right? Overall, 120 minutes, very minimal preparation required. You just need to be there. You need to participate in the assessments and you will be okay. The website has some sample questions and prompts and then you can look at that, okay? Just moving on. We shortlist based on your assessments and based on your application form, your academic, non-academic parameters. There's a complete and thorough evaluation by the admissions committee, post which you get shortlisted for an interview with a panel. Usually, I would say around 30 to 40 minutes is what you can budget your time for. The good part is we let you pick your interview date. We open up X number of days with different slots. You pick your interview date, you also pick your interview slot. So we are not going to assign it to you. So given, examinations and other things that are happening, we request you to pick a slot that's convenient for you so that you can show up for the interview. As of now, everything is online, so you don't have to go anywhere. The assessments are online, the interview is online. So within the comfort of your home, or if there's a cyber cafe or something nearby, if you don't have access to internet in your home, you can use those. And this would be a short 30 to 40-minute interaction. Again, we will interview out of your application form. The interview is personal, but it's also, we discuss your academic interests, your non-academic interests, and it can go wider into whichever direction the conversation takes. But the aim is really to get to know you and to gauge your suitability to Ashoka University. Finally, decisions. So you can get an offer of admission or a conditional offer, or you can be placed on a wait list, which is based on if there's availability of seats at the end of the round. A few people's decision may be deferred. Maybe we need that extra parameter of their grade class 12 final scores. And if you don't make it, your overall performance is not up to our criteria, then you can get denied admission. So if you get a confirmed offer, then a separate financial aid application form is open, and then you can apply for financial aid. I just want to wrap this whole conversation up before we go into Q&A very quickly here by saying that I talked about holistic admissions right at the start, right? And that is very important for us. And as you can see, we have tried our best to cover as much ground as possible in the application form and try to get to know you as much as possible, even before we actually meet you, right? And so we evaluate your application within your unique context. It's not, we understand that life is not one shoe fits all. Not everybody has same opportunities, same background, same, fortune or misfortune, whatever that may be. And so we want to interview you within your context. So the more information you give us in the application form, the better it is for you and for us. We also have a strong focus on affirmative action. And so your application form and the things that you put on it, are assessed and evaluated. And we do offer whatever support we can, whether it's social, personal, medical, geographical, educational, whatever your background may be, please do put that. We do also have a disadvantage question on the application form, which you can fill in should you think that you need that. Okay, so I think I will wrap this up here, Parneet, and I will let you take over. I'll stop my screen share. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Marsha. You've covered almost everything that we can think of, but you'll be surprised how many questions we have. And I'm going to give you a breather and take a couple of them so you can sip your coffee while I take the first two questions. The first one is on the requirements to get into the university. So it's very simple. You need your academic scores, which are your 10th, 11th standard marks, and your predicted scores for the 12th standard. Extracurricular, co-curricular activities, letter of recommendation. You need to fill in the essays. So the essays are an important part. I did mention letter of recommendation, and you just need to submit your application. The SATs, ACTs can be submitted. They are not mandatory. What is important is you must remember to take the Ashoka aptitude assessment, which is on a date following the date of submission. So it's usually, all of them are on a Sunday, so you don't have to worry about, taking out time specially. Once you've done both these, and also, of course, the on-the-spot essay, once you've done this, your application is complete, and then you can wait for a decision for the interview from us. The next one, Marsha, I'll give to you. It says, there is a student who says that I've taken 5 AS level subjects, but I'm writing one of the exams this year in my A levels. How do I do this in my form? Like, how does she fill it in the form?
For the, okay, so this is so 5 AS levels for Cambridge?
Yes.
So, in the Cambridge section, if you go there, you will see that, which is actually opening up the form. You can add, if you choose the board, right? So you have to choose your board, and then if you go down to adding your scores, if you go down to adding your scores, you can choose the number of subjects, and there's a plus sign at the bottom. Can you hear me? There's a plus sign at the bottom where subjects can be added.
Yeah.
So that's what we've done for Cambridge, and even for CBSE and ISE actually. Earlier we used to just take the 5 subjects, but we've added that extra because we do know that students take the 6 subject. So for Cambridge, you have the option to add. So there's a plus sign at the bottom, and you can add that.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, thanks, Masha. The next one is when we start an application, so I can take that. Does it have to be submitted in the particular round, or can it be carried forward to other rounds? So what you need to understand is when you start the application, you can start filling it. But when you submit it, is the date that you submit it on is when you will be considered for your admission. So I think, Masha, can I request you to share the screen with the calendar? It would make it easier for me to explain. So for example, if you've all started your application now, if you submitted by the 10th of November, which is 12 p.m., you will be considered in round 1. If you haven't completed your application and you take it on beyond the 10th of November, then you will be considered in round 2, and so on and so forth. So it's not that you have to restart your application. So there you have the screen in front of you, and you have the dates there. And if you take a look at those dates, it will explain, it's quite clear there. So if you start your application at any point, it doesn't matter, but the date you submit it is when you will be considered in that particular round.
Can I just add here that your form, whenever you start, will stay live till the 25th of May, which is the final submission deadline, which is round 4, as you can see on the screen. So you may, but we obviously would encourage you to apply early. That's very important. So apply as early as you can. However, your form will not deactivate. And so if for some emergency or some reason you are unable to submit it within round 1 or an early round 2, because these are our early rounds, you may still be able to submit. You will still be able to submit it in round 3 and round 4. So you don't have to restart or start a new form or worry about that. You can pick up from wherever you've left off.
Yeah. And since you're talking about applying early, I think what I want to highlight here is the fact that you have an opportunity to apply without your 12 board marks. We all know what stress students went through in the last academic year with their 12th board exams not being held on the time when they were supposed to be held, and then everything went haywire. So don't put yourself through that stress. My advice to you as a counselor would be apply as early as possible. You have the opportunity to get a firm decision from us without your 12 board marks, just based on the information you're going to share with us. And that's really, something that you must try and cash in on. My next question is, the acceptance deadline for round 1 is 14 February. So considering the fact that candidates also apply to some other universities which may not release their admission results by then, is it better to apply to Ashoka during round 2? Also, applying in round 2, does it affect your chances of admission and financially?
Would you like me to take that?
Yeah, sure.
To take that, because I just want to say that, of course, this is a common concern, right? That if I apply early, but then I'm also applying in other places, if I get my decision in Ashoka early, how do I navigate that? I just want to say that we have our refunds, if we follow the regular process of refund, not the special UGC guidelines for the pandemic years, even if we follow the regular process of refunds, you get almost everything back that you pay for your acceptance. And you only need to pay your semester. So that's whatever your acceptance fee is. If you don't apply for financial aid, or if you don't get financial aid and you are a full paying student, you get all your money back literally. They only deduct 5,000 rupees. Even if you pay your first semester fee and you withdraw, I believe it's 2 weeks before the commencement date. So as far as the refund is concerned, if that is a concern, then what I say normally to parents when I speak with them, I say that, of course, we all understand we don't know where we will eventually end up, right? And we hope that if you choose Ashoka, that's where you would want to be. But having said that, for whatever reason, if you get an offer of admission, you accept and you pay and you decide to withdraw your admission, what you lose is very, very minimal. It's only an administrative cost. And we don't charge anything more than that. And it is a maximum of 5,000 rupees.
And I think it's worth doing it because look at the amount of stress that you're cutting away from your life. So, yeah. Okay. So the other one that I'm going to take now is we talk about, a student who doesn't have physics and chemistry in high school and is studying commerce with maths. So am I eligible for computer science major at Ashoka? Yes, you most definitely are. And what is the degree you will get, a BSc or a BA? So if it's computer science, you will get a BSc in computer science. It's a science subject. Marsha, the next one, there are a couple of questions around the SATs and the ACTs. So just in general, I mean, if you can just cover a little bit about whether the SATs are, how important they are, what are the cutoffs, and I'll just club in a couple of questions together so that we can cover as many as we can.
If you have taken the SAT or the ACT, please go ahead and submit the scores. We'll accept them. We'll use them as well in our evaluation. Having said that, you also do mandatorily write the Ashoka aptitude assessment, right? And so what we would do is if you have done excellently in your SAT or ACT, and maybe you didn't do as well in your Ashoka aptitude assessment, we will look at both those scores that you have, and then we will take the better of the two, right? However, the Ashoka aptitude assessment is mandatory. On the other hand, if you don't have an SAT or an ACT, which in fact most students don't have, it's totally okay. We don't mandate it. It's not mandatory for us, at least to apply to Ashoka. You may have taken it for other institutions, so you are welcome to submit it. It adds to your application, but if you don't have it, you don't get penalized for it.
Yeah. And also, Marsha, if you could just cover on self-predicting your board scores. A lot of students, come up with this question and they're not very clear whether they should do it themselves or whether they should seek the help of a counselor. The counselor is supposed to predict their score. So if you could just cover that.
So, a lot of schools don't have counselors, right? And so what we have done is we have made it mandatory for all students to self-predict. If you have a counselor in your school and they're willing to share your self-predictors, you're willing to share their school predictor scores with you, you can predict the same if you want. If you think that you may actually do slightly better than what that seems, that's okay too. We will leave that up to you, but it is an indication, right, of what you're expecting in your class 12 final scores. So please don't exaggerate your prediction or don't underpredict as well, right? Predict moderately, predict based on maybe how hard you're working toward it, including how well you seem to be doing and learning. And so it helps us, it gives us indication. We don't make any offers based on your predicted scores, but it gives us a good insight into how you are doing, as opposed to how you did in class 10 and in class 11 and how you're doing in class 12. So it's part of the evaluation. It's not a decision-making input. So I just want to be clear about that. And so be as realistic as possible. I suppose that's the word. Be real, be honest as to what you think you'll expect, and that'll be helpful for you.
Yeah. Thanks, Marsha. So there's another one on, someone wants very generic tips on writing essays. So I think you're the right person to answer that.
So essay writing is not very easy in many spaces because we think that we have not written, our school education doesn't give us the space to actually think and write. So maybe some of us struggle with that. What I always say is one of the best ways to write any essay, right? Whether it's an essay that has to do with how we think, or an essay that has to do with what we are feeling, or an essay that has to think with, that has to do with something that we are exploring. And all our essays are around that. They're not academic research essays, right? They're personal essays. I would say the best way to do it would be to start reflecting. I think self-reflection is a very good place to start, where you look at the prompt and you start making notes. Of course, there's an introduction, and of course, there is going to be a body. And yes, you will conclude your essay. But before you get to the introduction and the conclusion, right, the aim would be for you to maybe take a piece of paper and a pen and start writing some notes down. The first question is really about what is an idea, thought, or concept that that you found interesting, right? Maybe you can think of 10 different things that you found interesting. You can write them all down. The next part of the prompt really is that how have you examined or engaged with this? As you start looking at each of those 10 things you've written down, you realize, I actually haven't engaged with 5 of them. So they just fall off the grid right there, right? The remaining 5, maybe you've engaged with some in a more deeper manner and some in a not so deep manner. So as you start doing the activity itself, right, your essay will come together. So your first few drafts should be your own, because you're brainstorming. You're just brainstorming with yourself on a piece of paper. And then as you start writing sentences, complete sentences, and putting it together, you'll see that it will take shape. But if you follow the prompt, you will get the response to your essay. I always say that follow the prompt closely, because the prompt is designed in such a way that if you address the prompt, your essay will come. What you then need to do is, and on the other hand, I can say maybe you've not thought very deeply about something, right? And maybe this is the time for you to think about it. So you could give yourself a few days to actually think about that prompt, think about an idea that actually interests you, do your own research, talk to a few people, engage with it, and you'll have something to write about. So that's just the first prompt. I think the next 2 prompts are probably more personal, and you can come up with that easier. But again, even in that, think about maybe there are 5 different things that happened to you, or that you were engaged with, or experiences you had. Which one do you want to write about? Before I end this part of it, I just want to say the only way you can write an essay is by writing it. You need to start writing. It's not by thinking somewhere in your head. You need to start putting words on paper. And as you start doing it, or on the computer, on an empty Word document, once you start doing that, things will come out from within you, and that's what we want.
So I'm afraid you can't really end that part there, because there's a question on the first personal essay topic. So the question says, can we refer to an existing belief that we find interesting?
Sure. It doesn't have to be new. The aim is it shouldn't be new. It should only be new if you haven't thought about anything in the past. It should be something that you've really mulled over, engaged with, something that, takes up your headspace at times, right? Tell us anything that you are really, really interested in. We want to read that. We don't want you to copy paste answers from here and there. I mean, of course, that's plagiarism. That's not allowed. But we want you to keep our interest in you alive as well as we read through your application form. So please knock yourself out and give us whatever you got, but really engage with it. We're looking forward to reading them.
And of course, the last one about the essays is, how do you approach the third personal prompt given this year? So I think students have really done their research, or rather gone through the application in a lot of detail. They're asking you very specific questions.
So one of the things we like to do every year is at least change a couple of the prompts, just because we want it to be new for you. We don't want it to, be responses from last year as well, because so this prompt is actually, I think it came from a discussion where we felt that language is such a key part of who we are, right? And it's not just it's not the act of speaking, because we know that this year that we have spent a lot of time in isolation. There may have been days where some of us really never spoke to anybody out loud, right? But words are very interesting, whether they're in our head, whether they define a part of our life, right? So maybe that's a good way to go around looking at it, right? Maybe it's a new word you learned which sort of captures a part of the last year for you, and which you explored, which impacted you in some sense, right? And had a significant sort of an impact on you. It could be something like that. So you could really go anywhere with this prompt, right? I mean, I know, like I was reading something on, I think it was a New Yorker. They had come up with a new word this last, a few months ago, to sort of give people a new word to explain the situation that they were in. And, it has been a global situation this last year. So a lot of us have felt very similar things. So maybe you have felt something like that as well. So it could be really anything. It's meant to really make you think about how you, what sort of word you find interesting, or which you hold dear, or you find favorite. You can address it in whatever way you want. It could be a very simple word. It doesn't have to be a fancy word that nobody knows about, right? It could be a simple word which has a lot of meaning. And I think that would make a lot of sense to you and to us.
Okay. Thank you, Masha, for explaining that so clearly. There are some questions related to courses and, of course, eligibility. So I'm going to take those. What sort of scholarships does the university offer? So we've got a very generous need-based financial aid policy at Ashoka. And this financial aid application opens up only once we've offered you admission. So it's not that you should say no to it. You must tick the box, open the application, financial aid application, and fill it. If you are eligible for an application for a financial aid, you will be offered the financial aid that you're eligible for. The next question is about the application form being online. Yes, it is online. We opened applications on the 4th of October. So please go ahead and start your application. And a reminder again, round 1 closes on November 10th. So please go ahead and fill in your application form. What are the benefits of applying early in round 1? So like I always say this to students, it's important to see how you are placed. Of course, we've got various rounds because the admissions team needs that time to, cover so many applications. But apart from that, it's also important for you to be able to, take time out. You need about 2 weeks to do a good, strong application. It's important for you to take that time out. And I think this is a good time of the year when, you're not really overworked or stressed about examinations. And the best part is that you can apply without your 12th board marks. So it's a good idea to apply in round 1. I think the benefit is doing a stress-free application. Does Ashoka University offer psychology courses? Yes, of course. We've got a major that we offer in psychology. We have many questions around the AAA Ashoka, the Ashoka Aptitude Assessment, Marsha, and I'm going to sort of club them so that you can take them because we have many more to take. The Ashoka Aptitude Test, how's the marking done? And when you take the test, if a student they have an exam on Monday, the day after the exams, after the aptitude assessment. So how do they deal with that? So can you just help with that, Marsha?
So the Ashoka Aptitude Assessment and the on-the-spot essay are together. You finish the Ashoka Aptitude Assessment, you take, I'm forgetting which one comes first, but whatever, it's together. You have a 5-minute break between the two to catch your breath. I think it's the assessment first, then there's a break, yes. And then you do the on-the-spot essay, and then you submit them together. Don't submit the first one without doing the on-the-spot essay. So do both. And it's proctored, it's online. We have AI proctoring, we have human proctoring. So we're hoping that you would sit, you would follow the instructions, you would do the assessments, right? Like I had already said, minimal preparation required. And so as you write the assessment, it's going to take you only 90 minutes, right? Plus 5 minutes. Oh, sorry, 90 minutes is the assessment. 30 minutes is the on-the-spot essay. So 120 minutes overall, 5-minute break in between. So literally 125 minutes. You have, some of you have an exam the next day. We know, but this assessment, because it doesn't need much preparation, and we open the assessment from 9:30 in the morning till 4:30. That's when you can log in and sign. So if you log in at say 4:25, you would still be able to take the assessment for the next 2 hours. If you log in after 4:30, you won't be. So my recommendation would be that start in the morning, start fresh, take a couple of hours, finish it, and then carry on with your day, right? So that you put that entire process behind you. And so you've submitted an application form, you've gone through that entire process, then you write the assessments, and then your application is complete. Otherwise, the application form doesn't get considered. And so I would say that the 2-hour break that you would take during the day, maybe to catch your breath, maybe you've been preparing and working very hard, you could do the assessments in those 2 hours. It would not be, it should not be stressful. And the essay is meant to be enjoyable. So both assessments, we are not trying to scare you with those assessments, right? We want to know how you think. We are not trying to guess how much you remember. So because the assessments are about how you think, how you read a prompt and how you respond to it, it's meant to be, of course you will be stressed because life stresses all of us out, but it's meant to be reflective, and it's meant to be enjoyable. So if you are submitting your application form on the 10th, then it would be 2 hours on the 21st. I just want to add that we will send out a demo link during that week before the 21st. So what you can do is you can sign in, take 5 minutes, sign in, figure out the system of how it works, so that on the 21st, it's not stressful in any sense.
And I would like to add there that it's mandatory for you to take the aptitude assessment for your application to be considered for an interview. So like Marsha said earlier, if you do not take the aptitude assessment, your application will be annulled. You have to take it. And of course, we don't call it a test. It's just a simple assessment. The syllabus is available online. You can refer to the website. There are sample papers there. You can go to the Cambridge TSA website because it's a thinking skills assessment. And you must, and I'm sure my team is also sharing links as I speak. So please feel free to go to those websites and go through the papers so that you're not stressed about the assessment. Anything that I missed out here? No. Okay. Yeah, there is another one about whether you can defer the Ashoka aptitude assessment. So unfortunately, no. If you're applying in the first round, if you've submitted your application on the round 1 deadline, you have to take the Ashoka aptitude assessment in that round itself. Okay, we'll go on to the questions on the letters of recommendation. Now, these are all very basic questions, Marsha, but if we'll quickly, I'll try and cover some of them. So can you submit more than one letter of recommendation? So no, you have to have only one letter of recommendation. And how will it be affected if I'm not able to provide a letter of recommendation due to a valid reason? And I think Marsha can cover that.
So the process for submitting the letter of recommendation is online. So there's no way you can submit to, even if you want to. I would just highly recommend that you please double check the email address of your recommender and the details, because if you put in wrong details, there's no way for us to rectify it. And so the email address and all the other details required by you are very important. You submit it, a link goes to your recommender. They will be notified of the dates they have and how much time they have to submit it. They submit the recommendation. You get a notification which says that your recommender has submitted it. So if your recommender has not submitted it, you have not gotten a notification, it will be good for you to follow up. That's one thing. And once it's submitted, it becomes a part of your application. So when your application is assessed and evaluated, the letter of recommendation is read along with it. And it's helpful for the assessment of the application. Having said that, we do understand that sometimes some people don't have a recommender that they can go to, or someone who can submit it for them, or sometimes there may be a miss from the recommender side as well, right? So because it's a non-mandatory function and parameter, we will take that into consideration, but you will not get penalized for not submitting a letter of recommendation. It's the other way around. It will help your application, but if for some reason you are not able to submit it, we will not penalize you in any way. So if you think you absolutely can't submit it, that's okay. If at some point in the future, say you get shortlisted for the interview and say you're interviewed, and then at that point, if we really want to speak to somebody, we will connect with you at that point. But 99% of the times we don't do that. So the ideal would be that if you have a recommender, let them submit a recommendation for you. It'll be part of the application process.
And it's also important, Masha, correct me if I'm wrong, it's also important for you to to notify yourself to liaise with your recommender and tell them that they're going to receive this link and they have to be on time to upload, because there's no way we can extend that deadline. Once it closes, it closes. And again, I'm going to say the email ID has to be absolutely accurate. Make sure that you've spoken to the recommender and ask them the correct email ID and filled it in correctly, because I get a lot of calls from counselors, and so does my team, from counselors requesting us to try and help a student who's made a mistake. So please, students, if you're serious about the letter of recommendation, make sure that you put in the effort to put in the right email ID, because it can cause a problem for you later. So yeah, and of course, who can give the letter of recommendation? Does it have to be a school subject teacher? It has to be somebody who can add value to your application, right?
It's not going to be a relative or a family member, right, or a friend. It's an academic or professional letter, so it can be anyone you have either studied under in school. It can be a teacher, it can be a school counselor, it can be a school principal. So somebody whom you have, whom you know in an academic capacity, or it can be a professional capacity where maybe you've done an internship, or maybe you have worked on a project with someone, right? Or maybe there's somebody who has mentored you and you have a mentor. Just not a personal contact as in a friend or a relative or a family member. They should have had some engagement with you, which is either professional or academic.
Yeah. We have some very simple, very generic queries also. Can we apply for a second time in another round? So my answer to that is no. You can only apply once in each academic cycle. I think an important one which I would like you to cover, Marsha, is about the book section. So are short stories applicable in the book section of the application? And how important, how important is the book section? And are short stories applicable? I mean, a book of short stories, I'm guessing that's what it's like.
So I'll just tell you this, that one of the reasons for us asking this was one of the things I said right at the beginning, right? Ashoka's curriculum is in a certain manner. And if you get admission into Ashoka, there is going to be reading and writing and research, right? On the other hand, not to say that if you are not a reader, you cannot learn, right? Of course you can learn. We all learn as we go along. What we want to do in the admissions process is to try and see if you have started on that process, right? So it doesn't matter what it is you are reading. So one book is not greater than another book, right? Or the size of the book, or the length of the book. It's not about that. We just want to know, who are you reading? What are you interested in? If you picked a book, what sort of book would you pick and what would you read, right? In another form, maybe we would ask you, what sort of movies do you like watching, or what TV shows do you watch? In the interview, oftentimes we do ask that, because we want to know what you watch, right? We may even take some recommendations from you, but for us. But the thing is that in the application form, given the nature of the program at Ashoka University, it's helpful for us to know if, apart from your school textbooks, are you exploring any other content, any other text-based work? And so it can really be anything, but it has to be what you actually engage with.
Yes. Moving on to the extracurricular section, we have a few questions here about how important is it, or is it mandatory to submit certificates of participation and of tournaments that you won or competitions that you won? And what about students who have very few extracurricular activities, maybe due to a medical reason or the parents' occupation?
Like I said again, I will say it, like I said before, I'll say it again, then we look at your application in a holistic manner, right? We understand that not everybody has the same opportunities. We understand that for certain reason, some may not be able to pursue a certain type of activity as well, right? Be it a medical reason or whatever it might be. We're okay with all of that. What we want to know is if you're putting something down as things that you do, whether it's something personal in your house, whether it's competitive, whether it's any sort of engagement that you are doing, right? If it is something that has a certificate that has come from a school or some kind of a body or an institution or, a sports sort of authority, whatever it might be, right? Or a dance. I know a lot of people do like Bharatnatyam or Kathak or, Udupi. So if something of that nature where you actually get some sort of a certificate, right? We would say that you can put that and put the highest one. If you've got an award, then I'm sure you would have got a certificate, right? So it's only to substantiate what you are saying. But if the things that you have done don't have certificates, right? That's okay. If that's what you really enjoy and that's what you really spend your time doing. So don't look at this as a section that is, I need to put 50 certificates, right? We want you to prioritize the things that you do with your spare time, your free time when you're not studying for school. What are you doing in your own time? How are you engaging? What else are you engaging with? How deeply are you engaging with those interests? So, which is why I said even earlier that it could be photographs, it could be, collateral, right? Or like I said, a website link, or maybe you're a blogger, right? It could be a link to that, or, or a YouTube link to something that you have created. It's really to know what you are doing with your time and your resources and your energy outside of your academics. And if you have certificates to document that, for example, if you're a student council president, you may have received a letter from your school, right? Or a badge or something of that sort. Or if you're the football captain, right? And you've led your team for the last, unfortunately, maybe not the last year or so, but prior to that, that's okay. Even if the last year and a half, you have not been able to do certain things that you're passionate about, I would say put the things that you did till maybe a year and a half ago that you were really passionate about. And you can mention that you have not been able to pursue it because that activity requires you to be out there in a field or in a swimming pool, which were shut, right? So these are things which is okay. We completely understand. But the ECA section or the extracurricular engagement activity section is to know what you really do with your time outside your schoolwork.
So thank you so much, Varsha. We've gone way over time, but I think we managed to cover a lot in this 1 hour plus. So thank you for your time, Varsha, and thank you, audience, for joining us in today's webinar. I hope this session was useful in understanding Ashoka's holistic admission process, and I think we were able to clear many of your doubts. Before we wrap up the session, we would really appreciate if you could please take a minute and share your valuable feedback with us. The link to the feedback form is provided in the chat box. Please note that the recording of this session will be available on Ashoka's YouTube channel in case you like to share it with your friends. Before we wrap up today, I would once again like to remind our audience that round one admissions to Ashoka University's undergraduate program are open. You do not have to wait for your 12th board marks to apply. You can start your application and finish it uh, really early. Join us for our next webinar on need-based financial aid at Ashoka University to understand Ashoka's commitment to ensuring world-class education made accessible to all. This webinar is scheduled for Friday, October 22nd from 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. and will be conducted by Vineet Sabharwal, Director, Office of Financial Aid at Ashoka University. The registration link for this is provided in the chat box. We also have a series of other admissions related webinars coming up in the next few weeks, where our team will help clarify all your doubts regarding the various aspects of the admissions process and the undergraduate program of Ashoka University. So mark your calendars and stay tuned for many more updates from us. If you have any further queries regarding various other aspects of the university, feel free to write to us at apply@ashoka.edu.in or call on the numbers shown on your screen. You can also register for one-on-one admissions guidance sessions if you need any specific help to complete your application form. The link to this is also provided on your chat box. Once again, thank you, Marcia, for taking out time to participate in this discussion. And thank you all for listening in. That brings us to the end of this session. Please take care of yourself and stay safe.